But first, we head over to our news centre with Devin Whiting, who has the latest stories we're following at this hour. Devin.
Hi, Jung-ho. Yes, news on the summit continues to come in, but in the meantime, the two Koreas are continuing to work on establishing a joint liaison office, which would enable more exchanges. Officials from South and North are at the joint Kaesong Industrial Complex today, which would serve as the site of such an office. And we have our Unification Ministry correspondent, Oh Jung-hee, on the line for us. Jung-hee, fill us in, please.
Devin, 14 South Korean officials left for the Kaesong Industrial Complex early this morning. They're there to check the site where an inter-Korean liaison office could be established, as agreed at the South's high-level talks with North Korea last Friday. The Kaesong Industrial Complex is a joint industrial park run by the two Koreas at the inter-Korean border. But it's been closed for over 2 years, since February 2016, so a prior inspection needs to be done so that the site can be renovated. The South Korean team is led by Seoul's Vice Unification Minister Chun Hae-sung and includes officials from the presidential office and a few private sector firms. North Korean officials will also join in to check the facilities and equipment.
Establishing the Inter-Korean Joint Liaison Office is the first measure of implementing the Panmunjom Declaration, and we think it is a significant and meaningful step for the sustainable improvement of inter-Korean relations. We will thoroughly look at the related facilities so that the office can be opened at an early date.
Following the results of today's inspection, the two Koreas will continue discussions regarding renovating the complex and setting up a temporary liaison office first. The South Korean team is expected to come back in about an hour at 5 p.m. today. Devin.
All right, we'll be looking forward to the results from that. Thank you for that, Oh Jung-hee. Now, U.S. Secretary of State Mike Pompeo says he believes North Korean leader Kim Jong-un has given him a concrete assurance that the regime is ready to denuclearize. Park Ji-won has more.
Speaking at a White House press briefing on Thursday, U.S. Secretary of State Mike Pompeo, who has met North Korean leader Kim Jong-un in Pyongyang on 2 separate occasions, said Kim told him personally the North is prepared to abandon its nuclear arsenal.
What I have said publicly is he has indicated to me personally that he is prepared to denuclearize, that he understands that the current model doesn't work, that he's prepared to denuclearize, and that, two, he understands that we can't do it the way we've done it before, that this has to be big and bold, and we have to agree to making major changes. I'm hopeful that Chairman Kim Jong-un is prepared to make that decision for his country, a big shift in his strategic understanding of his security.
While conveying hopes for a successful summit in Singapore, Pompeo reiterated Washington's stance that the U.S. will only accept North Korea's complete, verifiable, and irreversible denuclearization.
The United States has been clear time and time again. The complete, verifiable, and irreversible denuclearization of the Korean Peninsula is the only outcome that we will find acceptable. The President recognizes that North Korea has great potential, and he looks forward to a day when sanctions on the DPRK can begin to be removed.
Pompeo emphasized, though, the U.S. will guarantee North Korea's security as well as political normalization if it follows through on its pledge to denuclearize. The U.S. Secretary of State also revealed he will visit Seoul next Wednesday, the day after the summit, to discuss the outcome of the Kim-Trump meeting with key officials from South Korea and Japan. He will then fly to Beijing to explain the results to Chinese officials and to promote regional cooperation in bringing peace to the Korean Peninsula. Park Ji-won, Arirang News.
So it's been confirmed that the summit itself will be held at the Capella Hotel on Singapore's Sentosa Island. But where will the leaders and their entourages be staying? It's believed that President Trump will stay at the Shangri-La Hotel. It's less clear on the North Korean side. However, observers say Kim Jong-un might be staying at the St. Regis, Singapore, after reports said his de facto chief of staff was seen at that hotel. Meanwhile, Singapore's Foreign Minister Vivian Balakrishnan arrived in Pyongyang on Thursday on an apparent mission to prepare for next week's summit. Balakrishnan is expected to be fine-tuning the details of security and protocol. Now, South Koreans will elect provincial governors, mayors, and local councilors next week on June 13th. And today, for those who won't be able to make it to cast a ballot on Election Day, early voting has begun at polling stations across the country. Our Kim Mo-gyun went to one of them in Seoul and filed this report.
The National Election Commission says that citizens who won't be able to cast their votes on Election Day can visit any of the 3,512 stations installed nationwide from Friday to Saturday between 6 a.m. to 6 p.m. to vote for the new leaders. For this year's elections, citizens could cast up to 7 votes to select some 4,000 leaders for administrative, legislative, and educational posts, including 17 metropolitan mayors and provincial governors. Some living in selected districts can also vote for lawmakers as the by-elections to fill 12 vacant seats in the National Assembly is also underway. Despite concerns that the voter turnout for this year's local elections could be low, as much attention has been focused on the North Korea-U.S. summit scheduled a day before the elections, many voters still made time to exercise their democratic right to vote.
I'm on my way to Gwangju and I dropped by to vote. It's my first vote as an adult and I came here because I felt that I should take more responsibility and give more attention to political affairs to help create a better society.
I never forget to vote. I came early this morning because I want things to change. I want my children and my grandchildren to live in a better environment.
As part of efforts to boost voter turnout rate, President Moon Jae-in and his wife, First Lady Kim Jong-un, cast their ballots this morning as well, becoming the first sitting president to vote early since the system was introduced in 2013. Lawmakers from all parties have also been encouraging citizens to vote early. Members of the Democratic Party of Korea promised that 5 of their members will dye their hair blue if early voter turnout surpasses 20%, while Liberty Korea chief Hong Jun-pyo said he will dance to the party's campaign song if the turnout is higher than 30%. Kim Mo-gyun, Arirang News.
I'm Devin Whiting, and those are your news headlines for this hour.
It's D-4 until the much-anticipated summit between North Korean leader Kim Jong-un and US President Donald Trump, and Trump has said that he's raring to go. He reiterated that if talks do not go to his liking, he is prepared to walk, but if it does go well, we could be seeing Kim in the White House in the near future. Lee Seung-jae has further details.
Could the decades-old Korean War finally be coming to an end? That's certainly a possibility. Speaking to reporters at the White House on Thursday during a joint news conference with Japanese Prime Minister Shinzo Abe, President Trump said he and North Korean leader Kim Jong-un could sign an agreement to end the Korean War at their June 12th meeting in Singapore.
We could sign an agreement. As you know, that would be a first step. It's what happens after the agreement that really is the big point. But yes, we could absolutely sign an agreement. We're looking at it. We're talking about it with them.
With the historic Pyongyang-Washington summit now just 4 days away, Trump says he's all ready to go, adding he could invite the North Korean leader to the U.S. if the summit goes well. Should there be a follow-up summit, it will take place at the White House and not his Mar-a-Lago resort in Florida, as recently reported.
Maybe we'll start with the White House. What do you think?
Experts say a visit by Kim to the U.S. would serve as a powerful symbol of normalizing ties between the former Korean War foes. However, despite the positive outlook, Trump says he's still willing to walk out of the summit if things don't go as planned.
So I am totally prepared to walk. It could happen. Maybe it won't be necessary. I hope it won't be necessary to walk, because I really believe that Kim Jong-un wants to do something that is going to be great for his people and also great for his family and great for himself.
Meanwhile, the U.S. president added his administration's maximum pressure campaign on the North is still in effect. And if the term is mentioned after the summit in Singapore, it's a signal negotiations did not go well.
Maximum pressure is absolutely in effect. We don't use the term anymore because we're going into a friendly negotiation. Perhaps after that negotiation, I will be using it again. You'll know how well we do in the negotiation. If you hear me saying we're going to use maximum pressure, you'll know the negotiation did not do well. frankly.
Will we finally see an end to the 68-year-long war on the Korean Peninsula? The answer to that may come after one of the most anticipated summits in modern history on June 12th. Lee Seung-jae, Arirang News.
Now, joining us to dissect those words from President Trump, we have Dr. Woo Jung-yup from the Kaesong Institute with us today. Dr. Woo, thank you for coming in today.
Thank you for having me today.
Now, let's start with President Trump's suggestion that possibly one day normalizing diplomatic ties between North Korea and the U.S. It'll be quite a dramatic turnaround in relations between North Korea and the U.S. If this does happen. Do you see this as a possibility?
Yeah, though he puts the condition for the normalization of the relations between the United States and North Korea, which is that when the denuclearization process is done, he said that normalization of two countries is possible. So I think that what President Trump mentioned today is reflecting what is being discussed between two countries preparing for the summit on June 12th. So I think that it's not only the denuclearization process, but the normalization of the diplomatic relations between two countries are also being discussed to provide a measure to for the security assurance to North Korea.
President Trump also said that he would like to sign an agreement with Kim Jong-un, officially declaring the end of the Korean War. What could this mean exactly? And actually, where does South Korea fit in all this as well?
This is a bit confusing because declaration of the end of Korean War proposed by South Korean government is not official end to the Korean War. To end officially and formally the war between South Korea and North Korea is to have peace treaty between two countries. So because of all the issues that are related to signing the peace treaty, South Korean government proposed a declaration for the political purpose and symbolic gesture. So I don't know whether President Trump mentioned this political and symbolic gesture of ending the war, or whether he tried to sign the peace treaty with North Korea this time. But if he is meaning the signing the peace treaty, that means a South Korean government should be involved.
Trump has also made comments saying that if the meeting goes well, he could invite Kim to the White House in the U.S. That pretty much confirms that he's already thinking of another round of summit talks with Kim, doesn't it?
Yeah, after he met Kim Jong-un in Washington, D.C., he emphasized that the meeting is the start of the process. Before that, he said that the meeting on the June 12th is going to produce some outcome. But very strangely, that after he met Kim Jong-un, that he somehow lowered the expectation on June 12th summit. So I think that President Trump envisioned that there's going to be a series of meetings between him and Kim Jong-un. So I think that President Trump mentioned that possibility this time. And also, if there's nothing produced out of the summit on June 12th, there's going to be another summit soon in the future. So that is why President Trump mentioned the possibility of having Kim Jong-un to Washington or even Mar-a-Lago in Florida.
Actually, before we move on, there's something I'm curious about as well, actually. So, giving these summit with Kim Jong-un and Donald Trump, and also giving this summit to agreeing to to ending the declaration of the Korean War, doesn't this give Kim Jong-un quite a lot? Isn't what the North Korean regime has always wanted? An audience with the U.S. president, recognition of diplomatic status, and possibly ending the Korean War on their terms as well.
So there's some criticism from the U.S. side that President Trump provided much to Kim Jong-un already. But I think that President Trump mentioned all of these elements that he could provide with Kim Jong-un because there is something that he can get from Kim Jong-un on the denuclearization talks. So unless he would get some confirmation from North Korean government that North Korea is going to be denuclearized, it is very unlikely that President Trump would provide all these things that he mentioned already. So I think that President Trump and Kim Jong-un would confirm what kind of things can be exchanged between two governments on June 12th. So unless he got the confirmation from North Korean government that North Korea is going to be denuclearized, he's not going to provide all these things politically, diplomatically, or economically. He's not going to provide all those things to Kim Jong-un and North Korean regime.
Now let's talk briefly about that denuclearization process. There's been talk about the Libya model before, but now there's suggestion that President Trump may be considering the NunnLugar program, which was carried out dismantling the nuclear arsenal of the former Soviet nations back in the early 90s. Can you explain what this program is and whether they think that could be a realistic option?
So NunnLugar Act is about it's a so-called cooperative threat reduction program. So those countries left with the nuclear weapons involuntarily when Soviet Union was dissolved. So those countries are willing to give up its nuclear weapons at the price of security assurances and economic benefits. So for the guarantee of this process, U.S. Senators, Senator Nunn and Senator Lugar, jointly proposed the act, which is NunnLugar Act, to provide the process of denuclearization of those former Soviet Union countries, Kazakhstan, Ukraine, and Belarus. So all those nuclear weapons can be transferred to Russia and ultimately dismantled there, and also provide economic benefits, and also provide security assurances. And all these are made at the U.S. Senate, which is made as a law, which means that executive branch cannot unilaterally get rid of these acts. So that means that it's more of like irreversible act, irreversible provision of security assurance provided by the United States. So I think that is why the NunnLugar model is now being discussed.
Do you think that's realistic with North Korea, though? I mean, like...
The difference is that those countries, those former Soviet Union countries, are already ready to give up its nuclear weapons because they didn't have an intention to possess nuclear weapons. They involuntarily left with the nuclear weapons when Soviet Union was dissolved. So the reason why those countries had nuclear weapons is very much different from why North Korea had nuclear weapons. So if we solve that element, the technical process itself can be applied to the North Korean issues as well.
So we mentioned briefly earlier about the peace process and having South Korea involved in that if it comes about. But there are now talks that from the Blue House, there's rumors from the Blue House that suggest President Moon will not be going to Singapore during the summit. Why do you think that is? And does this suggest that the peace talks, the declaration, signing of a agreement on declaring the end of the Korean War might not be on the table as well?
That is why I think I mentioned that what President mentioned today was a bit confusing. Because what South Korean government has proposed was that if denuclearization is moving in the right direction, then South Korean government can propose to North Korean government and also the U.S. government that 3 countries can declare the end to the Korean War. So the first condition to be met is that there's something moving in the denuclearization process of North Korea. And since President Trump lowered the expectation of what kind of agreement he can make with Kim Jong-un on June 12th, that means that denuclearization cannot be confirmed on June 12th. That is why South Korean government is not planning to go to Singapore and to have trilateral meetings to declare an end to war. But now President Trump mentioned the possibility of ending the Korean War with the North Korean government. I think it's a bit complicated situation for the South Korean government.
Okay, so now let's talk about the logistics. How big an entourage do you expect Kim Jong-un to come with for the summit? We obviously can expect a very big entourage from the US. We've seen his bodyguards and his vehicles that he normally brings with him when he does an international summit. But then we also saw a glimpse of Kim Jong-un security running with his car during the inter-Korean summit in Panmunjom. Do you think that there are any issues that the Singapore could pose problems for the two sides?
I think it's very like usual business for the U.S. government because, as you mentioned, that U.S. government have been involved with a lot of multilateral summits before. So this logistics and the advanced team are well familiar with this process of providing logistics and the security provision. But it's the first time in North Korean history that their leaders are going to be in third-party countries, and they have to provide security for their leader with the cooperation from the third-party countries. So I think that the first thing that North Korean government needs to do is how they are cooperate with the Singaporean authority to provide the security to their leader. So even though the immediate security will be provided by their own personnel, but the peripheral security should be provided by the Singaporean authority, whether it's a police or military of Singapore. So I think that it's going to be very difficult and even headache for North Korean government to figure out how they are going to cooperate with the Singaporean authorities to provide securities to Kim Jong-un, because now it's a totally different environment, because even in Singaporean authorities involved in providing securities, you cannot shut out all the medias, and all those media exposures cannot be protected. So I think North Korean regime, for the North Korean regime, this is first time that they are going to face the challenges in international situation. So compared to the U.S., North Korean has a lot of things to figure out.
Do you think that's why the Singaporean foreign minister is currently in Pyongyang? Because we don't really know why he was been invited, but we know he's there and they're discussing. Do you think it's just logistics?
I think there are two possibilities. The first one is that, as you mentioned, that there are a lot of things regarding logistics and securities the two governments has to discuss to figure it out. And second, even though the visit to the Singapore, the main purpose of visit to Singapore is to have a summit with the President Trump. It is actually North Korean leader Kim Jong-un visit another country. So there should be some protocols that Singaporean government has to greet North Korean leader Kim Jong-un at that time. So two countries have to figure out what kind of protocols that they need to have when Kim Jong-un landed in the airport of Singapore. So whether he's going to meet the Prime Minister of Singapore government or what kind of protocols the Singaporean government should provide to greet Kim Jong-un. So I think those things should be discussed before Kim Jong-un take off to Singapore.
We have 4 days left now till the summit takes place. Not a lot of time, but it's been so unpredictable over the last few weeks. What do you think will happen over the next 4 days? And more importantly, do you think anything can go wrong?
I think that it's more positive now than before to have a summit on June 12th. And President Trump is lowering the expectation of what kind of outcome that he would get with Kim Jong-un on June 12th. So I think that it would be great if they can agree on the denuclearization of North Korea, and they would agree on what kind of formats that they are going to use to produce the negotiation within a couple months on the denuclearization process of North Korea. So I think that if this meeting is not about producing the detailed outcome. I think it is likely that we have some outcome, but it's not definitive. So we are going to see another meeting very soon in the fall, which will produce the more detailed outcome on the denuclearization process of North Korea.
Well, that's all we have time for. Thank you for coming in today, and we look forward to your insights next week after the summit is done.
Thank you.
And that brings us to the end of our show. I'll be back next week with more analysis from our expert guests. But also remember to tune in all day on Tuesday, when we will bring you special live coverage of that North Korea-U.S. summit with reaction and insights from our news team and panel of experts. You won't want to miss it. Thank you for watching, and see you again soon. Goodbye.
Literally speaking, a comma in your life.